on CBS Sports HQ, man, what a season it has been for Dallas. Nico Harrison has found himself in the headlines, maybe for the wrong reasons. Dallas fans really not happy with their GM after that bombshell trade that sent their superstar Luka to the Lakers and Anthony Davis to the Dallas Mavs. The fire Nico chants, a lot of zoomed in shots on the camera of Nico like this. If Luka went off or if AD was hurt, Dallas' season coming to an end just a couple of days ago after losing in the play-in to Memphis. And Nico Harrison has no regrets on that trade, despite what the fans think, despite what all of Dallas thinks about it, saying, quote, part of my job is to do the best thing for the Mavericks, not only today, but also in the future. And some of the decisions I'm going to make are going to be unpopular. That is my job, and I have to stand by it, end quote. So now that the Mavs season has officially come to an end, let's toss it out to Nico Harrison at his end of the year press conference. Let's take a listen.
Good afternoon, and thanks everybody for coming here as we try to close out this year and then obviously get ready for next year. Before I start, I'd really like to give a heartfelt thank you to the Dallas Mavericks staff. During the year, it's countless hours on the road, it's tons of times away from your family, and their commitment to our team has been amazing throughout the whole year. And then a big thank you to Jay Kidd and his staff. The job they did this year was elite. You know, they went the last 2.5 months without having any practices, but they still got our team in position to win. And a lot of times, not only did they not have practices, they also didn't know who was going to play because of the revolving door. And so I'd just like to thank them. And then lastly, the players. You know, they really, you know, the never say die attitude, they embody that. Next man up, you know, kind of all the cliches, like they literally lived that this year. And they ended up playing inspiring basketball. And it really showed their character. It was on full display. Injuries depleted this year. Depleted our roster, from the start of training camp. But the players and staff never wavered, and it really gives us optimism for next year. Defense wins championships, and we are hanging our hat on defense. We're going to return one of the best front lines in the NBA, and we have one of the deepest and the most versatile benches. The draft this year is extremely deep, and we're excited to play the role that we are. We'll see where we go after the draft lottery, but we know we're going to get a really good player. And then we'll also use free agency to kind of shore up the rest of the roster. With the support of the fans, we are committed to coming back next year stronger than ever. Every decision we make this year will be through the lens of competing to win, and our goal is to bring a championship back to Dallas. And with that, I'll open up for questions.
Hey, Nico. In the few days since your roundtable discussion with some reporters and since the end of the season, some players have acknowledged, you know, the challenge of playing through the post-trade noise. And, you know, in hindsight, they and Jason were the ones who primarily had to answer the questions about that over the last couple of months. Do you feel like the franchise and you specifically could have or should have done more to maybe mitigate that or deflect that away from them?
No, good question. Yeah, we could have been better. You know, as I look back on it in hindsight, we could have been better. Our goal is never to run away from the media. That's part of the job, and that's the obligation. But also, we wanted to talk after we had our roster. You know, our plan was to put Kyrie, Clay, AD, PJ, Lively on the floor so that people could see the vision. And unfortunately, that actually never came. So there was never a good time for us to do that.
And Nico, Christian Clark with The Athletic, you know, in the weeks leading up to the trade, how much discussion internally was about just, you know, trading Luka for another player who up to that point had missed a lot more time in his career effectively, like trading a guy for a player who I guess was more injury prone? How much did you guys discuss that or think about that?
Yeah, I mean, when you trade a guy of Luka's caliber, you're not taking it lightly. So we discussed everything, but we really feel that defense is our calling card and what we're going to hang our hat on. And when we had an opportunity to get one of the best two-way players in the league, we jumped at that opportunity.
Over here, Isaac from Locked On Mavs. When
I'm sorry.
No, my bad. When Luka comes back to town, the Lakers game's happening, and you're standing there, and there's thousands of people chanting for you to be fired. That's an experience that none of us, no one's chanting for for us to lose our jobs. Why shouldn't you be fired?
Well, one, I think I've done a really good job here. And I don't think I can be judged by the injuries this year. You have to judge from totality, from beginning to end. And so I think I have a really good working relationship with Patrick. I think you add in Rick. The leadership that we have is really elite. And you'll see next year when our team comes back, we're going to be competing for a championship.
Nico, you say repeatedly over to your left, you say repeatedly that defense wins championships. Are you saying it was impossible to build a roster that included Luka Doncic that was strong enough defensively to win a championship?
No, I think it's really doubling down on defense. And, like I said, when we had the opportunity to get Anthony Davis, who is one of the best two-way players in the league, we jumped at that opportunity.
Hi, Nico. Joey Mistretta with Clutch Points. Going off that question, you've made it very clear defense wins championships, and that's a very respectable mentality. It's an old basketball saying. Well, looking at Luka Doncic, he did get this team to the NBA Finals last year. When you look at Luka Doncic, do you consider him a championship-level player?
That's kind of an unfair question. Luka's no longer on this team. But what I am excited about is I do believe we have a championship-caliber team. And we'll show that next year.
Mike Curtis, Dallas Morning News. Piggybacking off that a little bit, you mentioned last week that Dirk is no longer around the franchise. Obviously, Luka isn't a part of the franchise anymore, and they're two figures that mean a lot to this organization and the fan base. Obviously, it's severed right now, just with everything that's happened. Like, I guess, how do you repair the relationship with the fan base going forward?
Well, one, you mentioned Dirk, and so it's important to say, he's the single most important figure to the franchise, so that's extremely important. I believe winning will help repair the relationship with the fans, and that's what we plan to do next year.
Yeah, I know you said winning will repair it, but have you ever thought about what if it doesn't?
I'm an optimistic person, and I move by faith, not by fear.
Nico, Joe Trahan from WFAA. You said earlier you don't like to run from the media, but Nico, I am interested in your reasoning by having that roundtable discussion without any cameras or audio equipment, and then less than a week later having this meeting that we're in right now. What's your thought process behind doing it that way if you say you don't want to run from the media?
Yeah, no, it was a good question. It was a collective thought process. It was meant to be more of like a roundtable discussion. Clearly, it didn't have the goal that we intended on doing it, so that's why we're coming back here today. The goal was that I answered all the questions today. I could talk about the team as it currently is and then what we do going forward. But because it fell flat today, that I'm answering the same questions I answered last week because we didn't do a good enough job. The other part that we really wanted to show is the face of the leadership of the Mavericks going forward, which is Rick and I. And so those were the two goals.
Is part of the reason you're doing this today because you felt the fan base needed more and there wasn't an adequate response to why you made the deal? Is that why we're sitting here today?
No, it was, well, one, we do this every year. We do exit interviews. It's no different than what we've done in previous years. But because we haven't adequately answered the questions, we figured we would open it up as well right now.
And Nico, will Anthony Davis need surgery this summer?
No, he won't. He finished the season fine. He feels good about where he's at, and he'll continue to build and get healthy.
Will Derrick Lively need surgery this summer?
I don't believe he will either.
And, you said defense win championships. We saw the Nuggets 2 years ago. I mean, they finished 15th in defense the regular season as kind of the one of the 30 guys who runs an NBA team. What's just your analysis of how, I guess, that Nuggets team won the championship?
I don't want to dismiss your question, but I'm not concerned about the Nuggets. I feel like we have a championship caliber team when we're whole, and we're going to hang our hat on defense. We're going to be one of the best defensive teams in the league, and I think that's going to be our calling card.
Nico, right here, Mac Engel, Footwear Store Telegram. When you were kicking the idea of this trade around, and you had various scenarios planned in your head, did the anger and outrage from the fan base, has that exceeded what you were kind of planning for?
Yeah, good question. I did know that Luka was important to the fan base. I didn't quite know it to what level, but really the way we looked at it is, you know, if you're putting a team on the floor that's Kyrie, Clay, PJ, Anthony Davis, and Lively, that's a championship caliber team, and we would have been winning at a high level, and that would have quieted some of the outrage. And so unfortunately we weren't able to do that, so it just continued to, you know, go on and on.
There have been a million theories about why you did the deal. One of them was that you were told to do it, that Mr. Dumont said, I didn't want to give the Supermax contract, which is obviously very expensive, to Luka. Were you told that you had to trade him?
No, not at all. Patrick reminds me of the leadership that I had at Nike, and you know, a really good leader doesn't tell the people that work for them what to do. It's a collective, you know, well thought out process to make a big move like that. And then also, unfortunately, I'm super stubborn, so someone telling me to do something doesn't work too well for me.
Nico over here. Speaking of Patrick, has this impacted your relationship with him at all since making the deal? Has this frayed your relationship working with him?
Yeah, it actually strengthened it because we talk a lot more, and we're kind of linked together to this, you know, and so it's made us have to have a lot more conversation. So I believe that we have a really good working relationship. He's came out publicly and supported me, and so I don't take that lightly, and so now I have to deliver on that.
What about you and Jason Kidd? You guys have been close for such a long time. How involved was he in this deal at the time, and how has this impacted your relationship with him as well?
Yeah, Jason, you know, I've answered this a few times. You know, Jason, I brought him in on the 11th hour, and the reason for that is because constantly during trade deadline, you're having tons of conversations. Most of the stuff never sees the light of day. And so Jason's obligation is to coach the team that he has right there. The last thing I can do is get him distracted by what could be, what may be. Jason and I are connected. We have a great relationship. We've had one for 20 years. And I know how Jason thinks. I know the players that he likes. I know the style of play that he wants to play, and we're connected.
Dorothy Gentry from Texas Metro News. Nico, how personally are you handling all of this? What keeps you in front of everyone? People, the fans are upset, almost hate. I have to say the word. How do you deal with that? How are you dealing with that? One, and then two, do you understand how they feel? I think they want to know that you feel their pain about losing Luka. What can you say to them?
Well, when you have 20,000 people in this stadium chanting "Fire Nico," you really feel it. I mean, I use the word awesome, but not in a positive way. Like, you can really feel how they feel. So yes, I feel them. How am I doing? I'm good. You know, I said this last week. God's got me covered. I have an amazing family and an amazing support group to get through it. But no, I absolutely feel it. But I'm also, you know, my job is to make decisions that I feel are in the best interest of this organization, and I got to stand by the decision, and some of them are going to be unpopular, and this was clearly one that's unpopular.
Nico, you've said over and over about defense wins championships, and you've been here several years with Luka for the trade. I'm wondering and he was pretty much a known product. He was who he was. At what point did you decide that you wanted to try to move him for something different?
Yeah, there was never, like, it wasn't the straw that broke the camel's back. When you live with someone for 3 years, you get to know their strengths and weaknesses. It was more about a change in philosophy in terms of how can we get a top defensive team that will help us win a championship. Again, this trade may never even have happened. But once the opportunity presented itself, we jumped on it.
So that wasn't something that had built, though, over like 6 months, 8 months, 9 months?
No, not at all.
Grant F. said DallasHoopsJournal.com. Over here. Yeah, right here. The organization had dealt with injuries, long before the trade deadline as well, but traded a healthy player in Quentin Grimes for an injured player in Caleb Martin, and it had hard capped the team at the first apron with 14 players. Did maybe the organization have any takeaways from that going forward about managing the salary cap in season, when injuries kind of mount and you need to sign a 15th player?
Yeah, absolutely. It's actually a great question. We looked at our managing of the salary cap is maximizing it to its full potential. So Caleb was one of the players that we were able to get that would actually just barely fit under the cap and the apron, excuse me. And so we took that and we knew what we were giving up. We knew that we were only going to be able to sign one 10-day. But the chances of 10 players out of 18 available players being hurt, we took that risk to get a player of Caleb who we liked forever. And so we did it. And now, to your point, did we learn something? Absolutely. That, there's scenarios where you can have more than 10 players hurt, which doesn't typically happen. And so that will be something that we'll keep in mind as we move forward.
Eddie Sefko, Maz.com. A couple of things, Nico. Along those lines, it was a horrific season for injuries, but what's your confidence level? I mean, these are older players who sometimes tend to get injured more or take longer to heal. Your confidence level that this was an aberration?
Well, one, before the trade, 90% of our injuries were contact injuries. So when you have contact injuries, by and large, those are unavoidable. And so it didn't matter if you were young or old. Contact injuries are contact injuries. So we have a great staff, and so I'm extremely optimistic that next year we'll go back to the mean, and you'll see a really good team out there.
Also, what thing or maybe things need to happen in your mind primarily to get this franchise back toward contending status and respectability?
Really, we just need to get healthy. I think the team that we're bringing back is a championship caliber team. And we fully expect to have Kyrie back with us next year when he gets healed from his injury. And we believe we'll compete for a championship.
Yeah, you mentioned Kyrie. What's the pathway to either a contract extension? I know he has a player option, obviously a decision to make, but what's your confidence that something beyond that can get done this summer?
Kyrie is a big part of what our future is, and that's not going to change whether he opts in or opts out.
Rashad Miller, Dallas Weekly. I know in your opening remarks you talked about this offseason, your goals for this offseason, but can you give us kind of what you're going to do for the next 2 or 3 seasons?
Yeah, I mean, our core actually is connected for the next 2 or 3 seasons, so I don't see much movement from our core. I really see how you shape around that, and it starts with the draft.
Nick Ang said, Locked On Mavs. You said that Patrick Dumont initially laughed at you when you brought him the Luka trade. What did you say to convince him to approve it?
It wasn't really it wasn't really a laugh. It was more of a chuckle. But really, it was just I'd said it out of the blue. And then as we started talking more, I gave him reasoning behind it. And, we're a very process-oriented organization, and everything we do is without emotion and goes through the lens of process. And so once we had those substantive discussions, then he saw the vision.
Hey, Christian Clark again. Do you feel like, just to follow up on Mike's question, do you feel like Kyrie opting in is a possibility?
It's too early to speculate what Kyrie's going to do, but what I do feel is going to happen. He's going to be a Maverick next year.
And then he's going to be out a significant portion of next season. Do you feel like you guys have to do something to address just creation to get through that time, and how do you go about doing that?
I feel good. You can't replace Kyrie through free agency. He's too good of a player. We have a really deep, versatile bench, and some of those guys will have to create. They'll have to create the void. It's going to be by committee. We'll use free agency, and then we'll also use the draft.
Nico, Noah Weber from the Smoking Cuban. One thing you said a few minutes ago is you said, me and Coach Kidd are aligned. You know the player that he likes. But when it comes to a trade of this magnitude, obviously, it's the main player that led y'all to the finals last season. So I wanted to ask you, what did that conversation look like at the 11th hour when you told him that y'all would be trading Luka Doncic? And do you think it was fair to him to have y'all's entire team built around Luka, but then in the middle of the season, him having to pivot to a completely different player to try to make the title run again?
Sure, I think there's some difficulties anytime when you do a trade that big during the middle of the season. I mean, we saw it when we traded for Kyrie a couple years ago. Sometimes trades take a little longer to you to really see like how good of a trade it was. But I also know his connectivity to Anthony Davis. He won a championship with him with the Lakers. I know his admiration for him as a defensive player, and so I wasn't worried about that.
What did y'all's conversation look like when you let him know?
It was really brief. I just told him the reasoning behind it and let him know, and he understood, and he got geared up to start whiteboarding to get ready to see how we would play with Anthony Davis.
You feel like he agreed with those reasons that you let him know?
I don't think it's about agreeing, but he aligns with how I think in terms of defense wins championships. That's how he feels. So he also aligns with the philosophy of versatile style of play. And so it wasn't really about agreeing or disagreeing. It was about, I see the vision, let's go.
All right, if you're just joining us here on CBS Sports HQ, that was Nico Harrison, his end-of-the-year press conference, where the media certainly did not hold back. Nico answering questions on why he shouldn't be fired and so much more. We're going to break it down coming up. But, of course, the Mavs missing the playoffs after the big blockbuster Luka trade, sending him over to the Lakers, bringing AD to Dallas, getting a look at the splits of the Mavs before and after the Luka trade, where they are before the points per game differential. The win-loss record certainly hurting as well. Lakers, they're still in it. They're still going for a championship. The Mavs, again, they missed the playoffs following the trade of Luka.